In Genesis chapter 34, this is after God taught Jacob the most important lesson of his life. He taught him that if he needs nothing else in life, Jacob, you need to cling to me. Jacob wrestled with God all night. Jacob grew up as a manipulator, a deceiver. He really didn't need God, or if he did, he attained God's blessing through his own manipulative ways. You want to see God work? Okay, watch this, the kind of guy. And all his life, he went through his life like that until he wrestled with God all night. And God put him in a situation where he was his only hope to survive. He couldn't manipulate anymore. His only hope to survive was to say, God, I have to trust you with this. That's a good place to be. That happened 2 chapters ago, and 2 chapters ago. And now in Genesis 33, he meets Esau, his long-lost brother again. And he learned that he needed to keep God first because all the relationships change. And now we're faced with Genesis 34, which seems really out of place when you read through the book of Genesis. This is the only time in the narratives of Jacob where he's really only mentioned a couple times. He speaks very few words. And it leaves you wondering with this story that's here in Genesis 34, a lot of questions. But from such a peaceful story of him reconciling with Esau, when we get to Genesis 34, we're confronted with a very dark text. This is a dark story. This is a terrible story. And it's interesting because it's right on the back of a peaceful story. So the genre is changing significantly here. Genesis 34, look at verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. What happened just there? A lot just happened. There was a lot of verbs in rapid succession. Saw her, seized her, lay with her, humiliated her. Modern day term, he raped her. Pretty heavy stuff in the first 2 verses here. Now, it leads us, who is this guy? What town are they in? What's going on? When Jacob left Laban's house, then he wrestled with God. He left Laban's house because God told him, Jacob, you need to get back to the land of Canaan. That's the promised land. Canaan is where you need to be. Leave Laban's house, wrestled with God, left Esau, met Esau again, and then look a few verses up at Genesis chapter 33, verse 18. Just a few verses up. Where does all this take place? And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. So Jacob is back in Canaan. He's not necessarily sinning by being there. And verse 19 now, from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of the land on which he pitched his tent. And here he erected an altar and called it Elohim Israel, God of Israel. So basically, this prince of the town knew who Dinah was because Jacob, Dinah's dad, bought their property, bought their land from his dad. So their families have met before, okay? Obviously, this prince of the town had his eye on Dinah. Now, this whole concept of royalty taking a woman is not foreign. It happened to Abraham's wife. It happened to Isaac's wife. And now here it happens to Dinah, except for this is even worse because this is a full rape, and it happens. Now, there's a lot of questions when you even read the first 2 verses. Why does God allow events like this to happen? Was Dinah out from under the protection of her dad? No, they were in the promised land. They were in Canaan. Okay? They were in Canaan. Sometimes bad things happen because we are sinners living in a sinful world. We are sinners living in a sinful world. We live in a fallen world, in a world that is corrupted with sin. And if we're honest with ourselves, we have to admit that we don't only live in the corruption of the world, but as sinners, we actually contribute to the corruption of the world. Makes us thankful for Jesus, who paid for the price of our sin on the cross. So after he raped her, look what happened, verse 3. Then his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. Very debatable there, but what that actually means. And he loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." So he said, "Hey, I kind of took this girl, and I found who I want to marry, Dad. Just get her for me." I mean, he's the prince. His dad's the king of the town. Terrible thing that happened, though. Look what Jacob did in verse 5. Now Jacob heard that he, talking about Shechem here, had defiled his daughter Dinah. But his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. What does that mean, held his peace? That could be an accurate way to render it. The Hebrew word literally means Jacob did nothing. He didn't do anything. His daughter was raped. His daughter was literally captured and raped, and still hasn't returned home, still in the town. Dad hears about it, doesn't do anything. What would you do if that happened to your daughter? He doesn't do anything. Look what happens next in verse 6. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to speak to Jacob with him. So in other words, remember, Shechem said, "Hey, Dad, this girl, I want her to marry me." Jacob finds out, doesn't do anything. Before he knows it, this guy, Shechem, his dad comes to say, hey, he comes to try to facilitate and organize the giving of his daughter for marriage. He says, verse 6, and Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to speak to him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field, and as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry because they had done this outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. For such a thing must not be done. What's happening already right here? So there's two different reactions taking place. One, Jacob heard about it, did nothing. Jacob's sons come in from the field, hear about it, furious. And they're saying, something needs to be done. Question is, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? We already know Jacob so far is doing nothing. So Jacob fails to lead his family through the tragic rape of Dinah. So you know what happens? His sons take charge. His sons say, Dad, something needs to be done. If you're not going to do it, we're going to do it. His sons take charge. Look what happens. Remember, Hamor came to speak with Jacob. Verse 8. But Hamor spoke with them, talking about his sons. He didn't speak to Jacob. He spoke to his sons. His sons have taken over. Oh, they're coming with negotiations. Dad, you're not doing anything. We got this covered. There's a takeover that happens right here. The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. So obviously them is including Jacob, but it's also plural, so it can't be only Jacob. It's the sons also. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us, and take your daughters for yourselves. In other words, what he's saying is, listen, you guys, since you've come here, you've kind of kept to yourself. You won't intermarry with us. Why don't you just give your daughter to my son? They've already had an intimate relationship encounter. Why don't you just do it? And then it's not going to be that bad. We have a lot of people in our town. You have a lot of people in your family. Let's start marrying. Let's break down these barriers that were there. Verse 10, he says, you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it and get property in it. I mean, it sounds like a reasonable thing. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, so they were all there, let me find favor in your eyes, and whatsoever you say to me, I will give. In other words, ask for me as great of a bride price and gift as you will, and I'll give you whatever you say to me. Hey, my son really wants your daughter. Name your price. You name it. I'm signing the check. I'm giving you the blank check, is what he's saying. Name it. Only let the young woman be with my wife. Verse 13, here is the takeover. The sons of Jacob answered Shechem. So who is negotiating this deal? Jacob's there. He's there. Is Jacob the one speaking up and taking charge and leading his family at all? No. The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully. They're sons of Jacob, all right. Because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to him, well, we can't do this thing. We can't intermarry with you guys, and we can't give our sister to somebody that's outside of our family because, you see, we're all circumcised, and that's really the issue. If all of the males in your town become circumcised, then we can intermingle with each other, and then we can, marry, and we can all be one big happy family. That's what he says. Look at verse 15. Only in this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are, that every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to yourselves, and will dwell with you, and will become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone. He's saying, hey, what do you want for Dinah? All of your males have to be circumcised. And their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem, and they said, very good, we'll accept that deal. And the young man, Shechem, did not delay to do the thing. We're in verse 19. Because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now, he was the most honored of all of his father's house. So Hamor, the dad, and his son Shechem, the rapist right there, came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city. Now, hang on, there's a big something that's going on here. So they had this private meeting between Shechem, the king of the city, and the prince of the city, to them saying, hey, all of the males in the town are going to be have to be circumcised for us to intermingle. They said, very good. The conversation on the way back to the city, how are we going to get every guy in the city to buy into this? Think about it. It was good for them, but they had to get every male in the city to agree to buy into being circumcised for it. So they concocted a plan. This is what happens. These men they came to the men of the gate of their city in verse 20. This is what they say to them. They hold a big town hall meeting. All the men come here, verse 21. These men are at peace with us. They're saying, hey guys, listen, this tribe out there, Jacob, they're at peace with us. And they want to dwell in the land. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us to become one people. When every male is among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Ooh, there's the big thing. How do you think every guy in the city feels about that? Here's the bait. Here's the reason why he gives them next. Verse 23, look. Will not their livestock and their property and all their beasts be ours? Whoa, hang on a second. Remember how rich Jacob is? Oh, he had dozens and dozens of camels. Those were Rolls Royces back then. He had all these flocks, and they said, listen guys, if you guys agree to be circumcised and we intermarry with them, guess what? We're going to consume them, and all of their stuff, all those Rolls Royces, all those camels, all those everything, they're all going to become ours. There's the bait. They wanted to consume them. Only let us agree with them that they will dwell with us. Verse 24. And all who went out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of the city. Big commitment there, but they were willing to do it because evidently, even though with what all the gifts that Jacob gave to Esau, he was still significantly wealthy, and there was enough material wealth that everybody in that city wanted Jacob's household, his stuff. So what happened after? Every male was circumcised in the whole city. Verse 25. On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure and killed all the males. Remember, his sons answered deceitfully. They said, well, you see, we have to be, you guys have to be circumcised. Hey, while they're sore from being circumcised, we're going to take our swords and we're going to kill all of them. Why? Because they raped our sister. Something needs to be done. Interesting. Does the judgment fit the crime? They're killing all the males of the city that had nothing to do with it. So this text, the conflict, first it starts as the rape of Dinah. The conflict gets bigger as it goes. Now, there's all of this deceit and all the males of the city, and they killed all the males. Verse 26, look at this. They killed Hamor with his son Shechem with the sword, and they took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. And the sons of Shechem came upon the slain and plundered the city. It didn't stop there. They weren't happy killing all the males of the city that were sore and they couldn't move and they couldn't fight back. They killed all the males and they plundered the city. They took their flocks. Verse 28, they took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys and whatsoever city was in the field. And in the field. And all their wealth, now catch this, and all their little ones and their wives, all that was in their houses, they captured and plundered. Really makes you wonder who's the good guy in this story and who's the bad guys. They killed all the males, they captured all the women and children, and they took everything and plundered the entire city. So what happens in verses 8 through 29? Because Jacob failed to provide leadership, his sons slaughtered the town, ended up putting you got to understand what's happening here. And they ended up putting their entire family at risk. Well, how is their family at risk if they just conquered the town? Let's keep reading. Only 2 more verses left. Stay with me here. This is important. Verse 30. Finally, Jacob speaks up again. Jacob, where you been, dude? Yeah, a lot's been happening. You've just been sitting there silent, man. Jacob, these are your sons. That's your daughter that got raped. How do you feel about any of this? It's about time we hear from you. Verse 30, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble upon me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household. This is important right here. Jacob is seeing all this happen. And once he hears what's happening, you killed all the males in the town, you plundered the city, you took all the women and children, you have brought all this stuff. Oh, what did you guys do? The land of Canaan is bigger than this one city. Great, you guys can conquer the city, but guess what? All of the Canaanites and all of the Perizzites are going to hate us now, and they can come and destroy us. This was a huge threat. This was a huge threat for 2 reasons. This was a threat, 1, because their lives were actually at stake, and then 2, This is, okay, the next 3 minutes, stay with me. This scripture's big though. This is important because why was Jacob even keeping to himself in the first place? Remember, they said, hey, why don't you intermarry with us? He was saying, no, I can't do that. Why? Because God made a promise to Abraham, to Isaac, and then to Jacob and said, you guys have to preserve your seed because it's through the nation of Israel that I am going to give you the land, the seed, the people, and the blessing. That's the Messiah. They had a mission from God, and Jacob instructed his family well in that he said, listen, we can't marry anybody else. We have to stay in the family because God is going to send a Messiah through our seed. What happens if the people of the family intermarry and mingle and dissolve away? There goes the Abrahamic covenant. You see that? It's more than just their survival. When Jacob says at the end, listen, I'm going to be destroyed and my household, he's not just saying, I care about my family. He's saying, listen, my household can't be destroyed because God made a promise through our family. And there was 2 threats on the Abrahamic covenant in this passage, in this chapter. The first threat was them intermarrying, and they wanted to dissolve and consume Israel. Hey, we want Israel to not exist. If we intermarry with them, then guess what? The genes are going to hop down and hop down and hop down, and the more generations they intermarry, the more Israel will cease to exist and it be dissolved. And then when they took everything, now Jacob is saying, listen, now we don't have the threat of being dissolved. We have the threat of being wiped out, of being conquered. Mess. Mess everywhere in this passage. Absolute mess. Jacob says, guys, what did you do? Jacob finally speaks up. The guy who's silent the whole time. He finally speaks up. And his sons rebuke him. Look what happens. If you've ever read the book of Jonah, this is a Jonah ending to this. But they said, this is right after Jacob said, hey, what did you guys do? Why did you slaughter? Now the Perizzites and the Canaanites, they're going to come and conquer us, and our family's at threat. They said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? And that's the end of that story. Just like the end of the book of Jonah, if you've ever read it. What's he saying by that? What does that mean? Well, Dad, you know, he treated our sister like a prostitute and he raped her, implying huge implication. And something needed to be done, and you didn't do it. You just let it happen, Dad. And because you let it happen, something needed to be done. And we had to do something. Because, Dad, I don't know if you heard, but they actually took Dinah and raped her. Did you hear about that, Dad? Yeah, why haven't you done anything about it? There was a huge implication in that question. When they said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? So this is a heavy, heavy, heavy story. Rape, murder. Genesis 34 is not rated R. Genesis 34 is rated NC-17. It is, well, is that worse than R? I don't even know anymore. It's rated the worst. Let's say that. There's a lot happening here. So the question we have to face, what is this story really about? Who's the main character in the story? Is it really about Dinah? She's talked about right at the beginning, so it leads you to think that she must be the main character. However, the initial conflict is with Dinah's rape, but then after that, you have the deceit, you have the murder, and then it ends up being all about the nation of Israel being at risk. Is it really just about Dinah? Sorry to say, Dinah's not the main character. She's not the main character. Is it Shechem then? He dies halfway through, and his dad does a lot of the talking for him. It's not really Shechem. Is it Jacob's sons? Well, it talks about Jacob's sons a lot. Only once or twice does it actually say Simeon and Levi. Who's the main character in this story? What do we make of it? This story is in the middle of the Jacob narratives. And even though Jacob is the most quiet one in this, Jacob is the main character in this story. You see, Jacob is silent. In the Bible here, the writer did this on purpose. He didn't just say, Jacob didn't say a word. He actually showed us he didn't say a word by letting all of this happen and never having Jacob speak up. You see that? After Jacob's silence, he's not heard again until verse 30, and he's reunited with his sons in verse 31, or refuted by his sons in verse 31. So Genesis 34 is about the failure of Jacob to lead his family through a painful situation. And talk about a painful situation. Their sister got raped. They had to deal with all the drama. They decided to kill a bunch of innocent people, hundreds, probably thousands, no doubt. And the ending is very similar to the ending of Jonah. Basically saying, we had to do something, Dad, because you didn't do anything. This text gives us a glimpse with what happens when God gives you a responsibility and you neglect to do that responsibility and you neglect to fill the role God has given you. It's an example of what happens when you fail to fulfill your God-given role. Jacob is the main character here. And you have responsibilities that God has given you, whether they involve family, whether they involve spiritual responsibilities, of course, work, everything, all the responsibilities God's given you. He's given you responsibilities. He's given everybody in here some level of authority, some position or title or influence that he's given you. For Jacob, everything bad that's happened to Dinah under his authority. Can't blame Jacob for that necessarily. Bad things happen. It's a tragic thing, and it's a painful thing, and I wish no rape ever occurred. But we live in a fallen world. Not dismissing it as not a big deal. It is a big deal. But listen here, painful situations happen in life. We live in a fallen world. And Jacob failed to lead his family through a tragic and painful situation. And because of his failure to lead, the situation becomes far worse. Jacob should have spoken up and taken charge of the negotiations and gotten Dinah out of there, but he didn't. And because Jacob neglected his responsibility, well, this is just a painful situation. Hey, my hand's off. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. Well, not a good idea. Jacob already forgot the lesson that he was taught to hold on to God and that God was all he needed. You see, God had rightfully equipped Jacob with everything necessary to lead his family through a painful situation. But Jacob flat out neglected to do that. He said, I'm just not doing anything here. I don't know, we don't know why. Was he just freeze? Was he hesitant? Was he scared that he was going to add more pain to an already painful situation? We don't know why. We just know he didn't do anything. And because he didn't do anything, his sons took over, and it got far worse, far worse. So what does this mean to us? It means that if you are here, you have either accepted Christ as your Savior, or you can accept Jesus today. And no matter what, if you are here, then God can equip you with everything you need so you can embrace your responsibility in painful situations. God equips you with everything you need to embrace your responsibility in painful situations. Painful situations happen in life. They just do. I wish it didn't exist. But painful situations happen. The good news is you have everything you need to make the decisions God wants you to make, even when you're in the middle of that painful situation. If you're a believer, you're equipped with the Spirit of God. God actually indwells you to guide you, and you have the Word of God for wisdom. If any man ask wisdom, let him ask of God, and he can guide you to what to do in painful situations. You see, that is more than Jacob had, and God still held Jacob responsible for not doing anything. And God will hold each one of us responsible for our responsibilities that he's given us. And if running from a situation like Jacob did, if running from a situation or unduly delaying a decision that needs to be made, no. That's what Jacob did here. And look what happens. If running from a situation causes you to neglect your God-given responsibility, nothing good will come upon that. That is the same sin that Jacob had in this passage. You see, many problems are not the result, and many painful situations, they're not the result of the wrong we did. Instead, there can be pain that can happen because we didn't do anything at all when we should have. Jacob needed to lead his family through a troublesome time. He didn't create that troublesome time. That troublesome time came to him. That's life. Life happens. And Jacob needed to lead his family through an extremely painful time, and he neglected to do that. When leaders fail to provide direction, those with misguided zeal take over. And that is so dangerous. When leaders fail to provide direction, those with misguided zeal take the ship and they take control. Whether it's in your family or in your job even, or in whatever area of responsibility God has given you. There will be times where God expects you to act on a situation. And if you don't, if that responsibility falls at your feet sometimes, not always, we'll get to that. But when we neglect to act, somebody will. There'll be a Simeon and Levi come up to take control if we don't. And before you know it, it's going to be worse and worse and worse. Those with misguided zeal take over. And those with misguided zeal know how to make a mess. They know how to make a mess. They know how to make a tragic situation worse. They know how to get people involved who should not be involved at all. Let's kill all the males. Let's plunder the city. Let's take all the women. Let's take all the children. Their misguided zeal. Well, he raped our sister. Yeah, Jacob, you should have taken control of that situation, bro. Jacob, God gave you the authority. Jacob, you are the patriarch of your family. Your family needed your leadership, Jacob. And not only does your family pay the price for it, all these innocent people pay the price for it as well. So what is that? What do we do about that? Oh, how Jacob needed to guide Simeon and Levi. They needed guidance, but he didn't do anything, and it ended up being a mess. God equips you with everything you need so you can embrace your responsibility in painful situations. Good, got it. What does that mean still? What does that look like in our life? Here's what it looks like. You will have painful situations in life. They will come to you. And when those situations come about, lead during painful situations. Lead. It's a delicate thing. When there's a painful situation like this, everybody's already hurt. And if we're not careful, there'll be a time when your family needs you to lead. Or there'll be a time when your church family needs you to lead. Or there'll be a situation that will come up in your life where you're going to look around and it is only going to be you that you realize, I have to do something here. Everybody's looking to me. What do? It's already a painful situation. I don't want to hurt anybody more, so I'm not going to do anything at all. Don't do that. Lead during painful situations. Embrace your God-given responsibility. When a tragic situation comes up, it's easy to not do anything at all. It's easy to run from it. It's easy to just pass the buck to someone else. It's easy to pass the responsibility. It's easy to do nothing. It's easy to be a Jacob. It's easy to just assume somebody else will handle it. And I'll tell you, they will handle it. and it will be a disaster. Apathy towards evil only generates more evil. Indecisiveness towards wrongdoing only generates more wrongdoing. Think about it. If you do nothing about evil, evil will grow. So if you're in that situation and you realize, it's already painful. I know I'm supposed to make a choice, and no matter what choice, somebody's going to get hurt, and so I'm just not going to make the choice. Whoa, you got to be careful. Because if we fail, if you're in that situation, and you know that you're supposed to lead in that situation and do something, and it's already a painful, and no matter what you do, somebody's going to get hurt. If you don't do anything, you're actually protecting that problem and allowing it to grow by not addressing it. You see that? That's exactly what Jacob did. Because he did not handle anything. He didn't take charge of his family. He said, this problem, I'm not going to do anything of it. Well, he actually protected that problem instead of dissolving that problem and solving it. He protected it. That problem was open for anybody to contribute and make it worse. He provides a greenhouse for the problem. And wrongdoing, and before you know it, it grows out of control so fast, just like this, because when those with misguided zeal take over, they're gone. That's exactly what happened here in Genesis 34. Jacob said nothing and did nothing, and before you know it, an entire village was slaughtered, and his family is in danger, all because he failed to address wrongdoing. He failed to lead his family when he knew he needed to. Everybody looked to him. His sons came back to him. The dad of the Hamor, the dad of the rapist, came to Jacob. Everybody came to Jacob. Jacob said, I'm not touching that. Not touching it. It's already pain. I'm in pain. Dinah's in pain. My family's in pain. I'm not doing anything. Because no matter what I do, it's going to cause more pain. That may seem noble. But did that not work out well in this passage. They were all hurting. Jacob could have cared for his family in a great way, and Jacob failed to lead his own family through a tragic and painful situation. So lead during painful situations. Now, what's something else we can do? Address wrongdoing. If you're going to lead during painful situations, there will be a time in your life where there are situations whether you're a parent, whatever roles you have are given to you by God. If God has given you influence and made you a leader in any aspect whatsoever, your role in the workplace, at home, at school, with your friends, does not matter. There will be a time where you need to speak up and address wrongdoing. And actually say, you know what, there's a problem here that needs to be fixed. Somebody has to speak up about this. But that causes pain. It does cause pain. It does. But that pain is not your fault. It's already a painful situation in the beginning. That's exactly what happened. Genesis 31. Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? There's already pain going on. Jacob failed to address the wrongdoing in his own family. Jacob failed to help his own daughter Dinah. He failed to help his own sons and the whole village. But he didn't even stop his sons from tricking and slaughtering all the people, taking the women and children captive. You see, sometimes we can look for a painless solution to a painful situation. And we can hold out to wait. So, I know, but you know what? It's just something big and it's just going to cause a lot of pain. So we just need to wait until a painless solution comes about. There will not be. There's no such thing as a painless solution to a painful situation. There's none. None. And that's no, we must still address wrongdoing. Painful situations require solutions, and those solutions are painful also. Just because a solution will bring pain does not excuse us from the responsibility to address wrongdoing. Now, I know this is general. Stick with me here. Jacob was thinking, well, if there's no easy way out of this, then I'm not going to do anything. There's no easy way out, I'm not doing anything. Where there's a wrongdoing in an area that God placed you in as the authority, it is your God-given responsibility to gently and humbly address that wrongdoing. Whatever an area God has placed you in authority. Question is, it sounds great. Sounds easy, but it's hard to do. There's a reason why. There's no doubt Jacob was feeling a lot of pain himself. His own daughter got raped. But he still didn't. This is not an easy thing. So question is, how do we do that? Galatians 6 helps us with this. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in the spirit of gentleness. Notice that. Jacob was not being spiritual by doing nothing. No. The spiritual thing to be doing was saying, all right, we need to address this. This is a problem in the family, and we need to address it. A lot of people are already hurt. Dinah got raped. There's no doubt there's a lot of people hurt. Everybody's mad. We need to get together and address this and figure out a solution to it. If something hurts going in, it's going to hurt coming out. There's no way around that. But we must do it in the spirit of humility. You who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself. Otherwise, we're going to be tempted. The next verse says it this way: bear one another's burdens. Bear one another's burdens. The word for restore in Galatians 6:1, ye who are spiritual, restore, it means to be perfectly joined together. It's like, excuse me, it's like when a bone in your body is out of joint. I remember once I was at a wrestling tournament in high school, and there's injuries all the time in wrestling tournaments. And I remember this one time, this guy had a lump in his arm that should not have been there. And there was a bone right here that was out of joint, and it was just looked like a golf ball that was underneath his skin sticking up. Stretchers got there. I don't know why they did it. They usually wait till they get to the hospital, but they said something to distract him, and he looked the other way, and before you know it, and they put it back in socket. Something's out of socket. It hurts. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not touching it. You're just going to have to live with that pain because I'm not going to address it. Painful situation. Ye who are spiritual, restore such an one. That's what that word means. It means to set, to put it back in place. Gently and lovingly. And there will be pain. But that's not the goal. You can't get around that. Maybe a less graphic way to say it is this. Like maybe perhaps I should have used this example and not the bone thing, although that's exactly what the word means. Sometimes Ian and Evan, they're at the time where they're just outside. They're 7 and 8 years old, my two of my sons, and it's not uncommon for them to get a splinter. And sometimes one of them will get a splinter, a little piece of wood underneath the skin. Sometimes they're pretty deep. And it's funny because it started off as a joke. I would never do this, okay? I would never actually do it. But one time I asked Ian, come here, let me see your splinter. And he's like, ouch, it hurts. And then he's like super nervous because it hurts so much. And then I said, I'm looking close. I said, and Evan was right by. It's Ian's arm. I said, Evan, go get my drill. Evan goes, okay. And Ian goes, no. And I would say little things like that. Evan, go get my saw. Right? They know that's a joke. But you know the scariest words that I say to them when they have a splinter? Go get the tweezers. Tears start coming. I'm serious. No! But it's gonna cause pain. But that's what will solve it. Because the situation is already painful. Either you're going to help the person that's in pain, or you're not going to help the person that's in pain. And this text puts the responsibility of Christians to lovingly bear one another's burdens by lovingly restoring each other when they're in painful situations. That's life in a church family. That's life in a family. Everybody looked to Jacob. Jacob, not doing it. How did that work out for you, Jacob? How do you think Dinah felt when they were rescued by her sons and said, yeah, we had to do this. Dad didn't do anything. Did you know that pain is actually a gift from God? It's actually a gift from God. Pain notifies us that something is wrong and prompts us to solve it, to come up with a solution. It's actually a gift. You see, if I would never pull a splinter out from Ian or Evan, guess what? It's just going to grow and become infected. It's going to contribute to more pain if it's not addressed. So help the person in pain. Help them. Don't wait for a painless situation. If the situation's already painful, lovingly help them. Help will require addressing wrongdoing. Everybody knows. You ever tried to share the gospel with somebody? What's the first step to sharing gospel? Well, first you have to admit what? Well, that hurts me. That's pain. Don't say that. Just share Jesus with me and leave the pain out of it. You see that? That's heresy then. You can't share Jesus with somebody without telling them and prompting them to confess that they are sinners. That's prosperity. That's not the true gospel. That's a false gospel. The gospel is, God, I have sinned and I am in pain, and Jesus Christ paid for the solution. He bled on the cross. Thank you for sending him to die in my place. He paid the penalty for my pain. And you know what? I'm going to put my faith in Jesus because my sin causes me pain, and I have pain and I'm in sin. You have to. You can't remove sin from the part of salvation. It's part of the healing process. That's part of it. You know who is a really good example of this? Jesus. The zeal of Jesus was not misguided zeal like Simeon and Levi. The zeal of Jesus was a perfect zeal, a holy zeal. Question, did Jesus ever cause anybody pain? I remember once he went in the temple and he saw these tables where people were making money. They were buying and selling something you're not supposed to do in the temple. He just said, there's just something in my heart that maybe I'll just use a different entrance then so I won't walk by it. No, that's what Jacob would have done. What did Jesus actually flipped over the tables, made a scourge of cords, literally made a whip. Get out of here. Now, I'm not saying do that today. We're not Jesus. However, Jesus is a good example of somebody who had a holy zeal and somebody who was not afraid at all to address wrongdoing in order to restore somebody. He's the best example of it. He encountered a lot of wrongdoing with the Pharisees. Did he ever address their wrongdoing? Oh, he called them out for false teaching. He actually said, yep, some people are full of dead men's bones. There's no life in them at all. Telling it like it is. No life in them. Jesus did not cause undue pain. The situation was already painful. What he did was corrected it, addressed the wrongdoing for the benefit of everybody that was there, for the benefit of the body. Address the wrongdoing for the benefit of the church or for the benefit of the family or for the benefit of the workplace, whatever area the Holy Spirit's talking to you about. I'm not the Holy Spirit. I just know in the Christian life, there's going to be times where God expects you, is going to place the responsibility at your feet to address an issue, a painful issue. I'm not the Holy Spirit. Only God can talk to you about that, when that is and what situation it is. But let me ask a couple questions. Is there something that Jesus would correct in your life? What in your life has God been talking to you about? And maybe Jesus, he's not overturning some tables in the temples, but maybe there's some tables in your heart that he needs to overturn, that he's trying to overturn and trying to address something with you in your heart or in your life. Maybe there's something in the church. What in the church would Jesus correct? If he came in today, anything? What if he came into your family and he was a member of your family today? What are you tolerating that really, what have you been putting away from addressing that just needs to be addressed? And you need to have a difficult conversation because you love them. Anything? Now, I fully understand that something like this, if we're not careful, we can walk out to think it's my job to tell everybody what's right and what's wrong then. Don't misapply this in your heart. Don't misapply this. Follow the leading of the Holy Spirit. He will tell you when there's situations that come up in life that he's placing the responsibility at your feet to lead. And often your family will tell you that also, if it's a family situation. And if it's a work situation, your workplace will tell you that. They're looking to you for that. Or if it's a church situation, the church will look at you for that, if it's your area of responsibility. Whatever it is, follow the leading of God, even if it's a difficult thing. Jesus ultimately was not scared of pain. He actually put the pain upon himself by going to the cross. And he endured the worst pain so he can equip you with salvation. And if you accept Christ, you have the Holy Spirit inside of you. And he is the ultimate guide to this, to guiding you onto which situations you need to speak up. And which situations maybe require a pause. Okay, it's not that I'm not going to do anything, but I'm not going to do anything right now. Just don't delay too long. Because if people with misguided zeal come in, before you know it, you're going to be picking up bodies in that city. And let not that blood be on our account. Because God equips you with everything you need to serve him faithfully. You are fully equipped to serve God. You're fully equipped to make the right decisions in times like those. You're fully equipped. You can embrace your responsibility even in painful situations. Not all texts are super encouraging. I wish this text wasn't in there. There's a lot of pain in Genesis 34. But I'm glad that if you know Jesus, you can have the balm that cures all pain. And that's the blood of Christ. And you can administer that to others by sharing the gospel with them. And if you're here and you just don't know what's going on, maybe you're going through a painful situation and you just want to know how you can get those burdens lifted, I get it. Talk to me. I'll be here after the service. Go to the website. You can put out just say, hey, contact, talk to the pastor, whatever you want. Make an appointment, anything. We're available. I'd love to be able to show you how Jesus Christ can equip you with the wisdom you need to be able to handle situations like this in life, because situations are going to come to you. Boy, I hope you have Jesus in your heart when situations come.